Hi everyone, it's Ren here. Welcome to my room, guys. Hope you're well today. Yes, I don't know why I'm feeling so metal. So before I move on to my topic, which is going to be the question of whether the INFJ type is the most feminine type, just remember, I written 2 books: The Infinite Castle, my new novel, The Ecstatic Soul, my book on the INFJ, both available down below for less than $10. Thank you for your support. You can also support my Patreon page, and my Patreon page is fantastic because I was lately talking to the community there and asking them any suggestions for videos to cover, because sometimes I'm like, oh, I've been making videos for 4 years, like hundreds of videos, and I'm like, am I repeating myself? Am I really addressing the kind of stuff that my audience is interested in? And I was kind of asking them, and they were like, they came up with a flurry of suggestions within a few hours. So that's fantastic. And that video that I'm making today is a suggestion by one of my subscribers. So thank you so much. Okay, so it's a topic that seems frivolous on the surface, and I haven't actually thought about it in a lot of detail, which is kind of fun because we're going to sort of try to see what we come up with as we go along, right? It's not like a video where I've been kind of having it in my mind and, just like laying it out for you as I had planned it. It's more like a hot take. Yeah. Maybe this is what this channel needs, more of hot takes. So the question we're trying to answer here is the INFJ the most feminine type? Obviously, that would apply both to INFJ females and to INFJ males. So in other words, are INFJ females more likely than other types to be like the sort of stereotypical feminine female, and are INFJ males more likely to have a strong feminine side? We all know that everyone has a masculine and feminine. If you are into Jung and believe in the whole concept of animus and anima, you also like that idea. You're also on board with that idea. I think that's pretty uncontroversial. The question is whether the INFJ would be the most feminine. So there's my intuitive answer, and then there's my more analytical answer. My more intuitive answer would be to say no. No, INFJ is not the most feminine type because for reasons that are worth entering into a bit more detail, FI, introverted feeling, tends to be associated with femininity. Or rather, I should say that FI, introverted feeling, tends to be, among all the functions, it's the function that tends to be associated, and that dates back to Jung, by the way, with what is called feminine intuition. Now, when you read the general description of the types in Jung, you might think that some of the passages, however insightful in other respects, require to be updated in some sense in the light of nowadays politics and nowadays perceptions. Some of the vocabulary and some of what Jung says can come across a little bit dated when it comes to talking about women. I wouldn't necessarily say sexist or misogynistic because you have to place it in context, like so many of the texts of this period. But still, there's some of the language is a little, you don't quite know what to make of it. However, the fundamental insights remain, that introverted feeling is a function of self-contained value making, and which comes with a very singular notion of how to express your emotions, because the expression of emotion and the possession of value are connected in some sense. When you make a value judgment, you express a particular kind of emotion along with it as part of being human. The high FE user, well, interestingly, in a lot of fiction, both in books and on TV, the sort of typical ESFJ is a female. The unhealthy ESFJs that forms cliques and everything is a female. But I would actually argue that if you look at the facts a bit more objectively, the expression of emotion in corroboration with a social feeling, a social kind of, so if you're an FE user, your value is collective, therefore the expression of your emotion is going to be attuned to the collective. I think that's actually more of a male thing. Again, we're talking about percentages here, we're talking about tendencies, we're not talking about absolutes, but I think that it generally is a male thing, whereas like this sort of self-contained expression of emotion tied to a personalized value system is associated with being more feminine. And this is something that comes across, in sort of female INFPs and female ISFPs, where you feel like they're a little bit kind of mysterious, they're a little bit hard to kind of understand and to pierce the layers of what they really stand for, what they really believe. And at the same time, you sense there's strong emotion there. So this combination of mystery, distance, and emotion is something that tends to be quite associated with the feminine, for better or worse. Again, we're talking about perceptions. So I would say FI. Now, the more analytical side of me would probably want to say that we need to start with a definition of what feminine stands for, and then sort of look at the different functions. But again, the problem with this approach is that what the feminine stands for is kind of a social construct, and it's a social construct that's liable to vary across cultures. So perhaps insofar as our Western culture is concerned, the feminine stands for, among many things, for what I said in terms of the self-contained value and emotion side of things, and this sort of aura of mystery and of not being able to quite grasp the other. Note that the motherly traits can be also defined slightly differently than the feminine traits. You can define them in terms of FI, you can also define them in terms of FE, obviously, because the sort of mother of the house, the person who runs the house, the person who's the provider. There's like a strong FE kind of undercurrent there, so you can definitely give an FI account of the mother relationship to the child, but it depends on the perspective. However, I think that's insofar at least as the way that I look at it from like a sort of Western viewpoint, I think that's the FI is going to be the most sort of feminine function. Now, INFJs don't have FI. Also, INFJs don't have SE, and SE is often associated with, I think, more masculine traits, being forward, being in your face, being confrontational, being exploratory, being a conqueror in some ways, the phallic image as opposed to the image of the female counterpart, that kind of is, not phallic. So anything that's kind of phallic is something that pierces, something that goes forward, something that is not tamed by anything and tames other things. And SE tends to be associated with that function. Now, it's obviously true that the INFJ has an SE inferior, but instead of an absence of SE, with the INFJ, you're probably going to see more something like an SE that's incompletely expressed. So rather than INFJs coming across very feminine, what I would say is that INFJs are likely to come across as sort of weirdo males, like for the males, and for the INFJ female is going to come across like, I don't know about weirdo female, but certainly a female that has a certain trait that seems to transcend the male-female distinction. And I think that applies to the male as well. So it's rather than being more feminine or masculine, it's more like, well, if you're male, you're going to seem more or less male. If you're female, you're going to seem more or less female. But then there's going to be this other trait that seems maybe slightly outside of those norms because of the NI dominance of the INFJ, the sort of spiritual kind of vibe that they tend to have. And again, this sort of alienation from the SE function. It's the SE function still there, but it's a form of alienation from it. So it's not necessarily going to translate as femininity, but more as a kind of, okay, what are we dealing with here exactly? It's not quite clear. So often the INFJ will come across more intellectual than average, more cerebral than average, but also more spiritual than average. And again, the spiritual is not marked feminine or masculine. So that was my view, my hot take. Hot takes ought to be probably under 10 minutes, otherwise they start to be colder takes. So let me know what you think in the comments, guys, and I hope to hear from you soon. Ciao.